We're talking December 7th, 1996.
It's a day forever etched in Lori Knight's mind.
It'll be 23 years.
A memory as clear as the words etched on her daughter's grave, and as permanent as the picture on her arm.
I got her tattoo, so I carry her with me all the time.
Today, Tawnya Knight would be 38.
She was the type, if you were down, she could just start talking and you forgot about your troubles.
Instead, her life ended at 15. Tawnya had just moved back to Spring Hill, Kansas. A few years before that, she was with her mom in Arizona. On December 8th, her dad, Frank, called Lori, saying Tawnya went to a party but never came home.
I started panicking.
Lori says it wasn't like Tawnya. She always checked in and was always on time. Lori says she told that to police, but they listed Tawnya as a runaway.
For law enforcement to automatically assume a teenager is a runaway, that's wrong. You know, because the parents know their kids better than the authorities. She would have taken her makeup, she would have taken clothes and money.
For 6 months, her family held on to hope. But in June 1997, a farmer tending to his field came across a skull.
The body that they had found was Tanya's.
It was right near a cemetery just blocks from their home where she lived with her dad.
I think the hardest thing is to knowing she was that close for this long.
The Johnson County Sheriff's Office was one of several agencies working the case.
If you would have found the body 6 days later, this would be a whole different story, and I may not even be sitting here.
Whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Whole different ballgame.
Do you think about that often?
All the time.
Sheriff Calvin Hayden says the decision to call Tawnya a runaway was a product of the times. They didn't have technology or evidence to prove anything else.
Those are lessons learned.
That decision has brought us to where we are today. No suspects publicly named, no charges, no justice for the family of Tawnya Knight. The Sheriff's Office says they have 2 people in mind, but they can't say anything more.
Any eyes on this case that can see something we've missed or something that's pertinent, we'll use anybody we can.
The only thing I know is somebody took her life. And they need to pay.
First detective to get on the case was Scott Atwell. He never gave up. He was working that case every chance he got. Since Scott retired, it was like the Johnson County Sheriff's Department just put it on a shelf.
I tracked down Detective Atwell. He says he has concerns too. He says he went to dinner with Sheriff Hayden recently and claims the sheriff said this.
Sheriff Hayden looks up and said, well, we don't even know that it's a homicide. And I'm looking at him like, I really can't believe that you just said that.
How do you say you rule out homicide? I'd like to know the answer to that.
How should the family feel when they hear that?
Well, I'm sure they're probably devastated. If he doesn't think it's a homicide, maybe the rank and file below him, well, it will carry that on and say, okay, it's not a homicide, let's don't worry about it, let's move on.
Did you say that?
I don't think I said it wasn't a homicide.
Okay.
We have a coroner, you know, and here's the problem with this. When you've got bones that are 6 months old, it's very difficult to determine that, the cause of death.
Sheriff Hayden says Tanya's body was severely decomposed. It sat in a field through 6 months of cold winter and wet spring. But he insists he's never strayed from investigating it as a homicide.
It is still a priority. We are going to put more resources into this case in the near future.
Sheriff Hayden tells me in the new year he's bringing in 3 retired homicide detectives to review Tanya's case. He hopes fresh eyes will shed new light.
And that's how you solve a case.
In the meantime, Lori has hired a private investigator to piece together her daughter's final night and the high school drama that he says cost her life.
You believe the altercation happened right here?
Yes. 2 people carried her. They came up here to this fence right here.
That investigator is now working with police. Lori also started a Facebook page to raise awareness.
We've posted a lot of pictures.
I admire their commitment and their courage, and I don't think there's any door they haven't knocked on to try to bring this case to the forefront, and we're listening.
Lori hopes in year 23 she'll finally be able to do what that Facebook page says: find justice for Tawnya Knight.
I tell her that we're never giving up, you know, never will.
3 years, Spring Hill, Kansas has certainly changed. For instance, there's a new coffee shop on Main Street.
You know, Tawnya was a typical 15-year-old.
It's where we met private investigator Jeff McDonald. But in other ways, this town has stayed the same.
She walked around this town a lot.
Kids Tanya's age still walk the streets, and people still ask, what happened to that 15-year-old girl that December night? McDonald thinks he knows.
This one's extremely interesting.
He spent a year and a half interviewing more than 100 people. He's narrowed it down to 4. He says 2 girls helped plan the murder, or at least knew what happened, and 2 others, a guy and a girl, actually committed the crime. He's nicknamed that guy the Heavy, the girl the Mastermind. They've never been charged.
How sure are you that these 4 are responsible?
I'm almost at 100%. I think, you know, there's a message here is, you know, be careful who your real friends are.
She was a very loving person, and it's like she never met a stranger.
Lori Knight, Tanya's mom, hired McDonald with the help of a friend. She's told him everything about her daughter.
She was very sweet. She was bubbly, always happy.
And in a different way, he's done the same.
I know a lot more now about that case than what I knew before. It wasn't a stranger, that it was somebody that she actually knew. And that's a hard part too.
McDonald says the Spring Hill Cemetery is where the mastermind and the Heavy orchestrated a vindictive crime out of jealousy, all to seek revenge.
This is where we believe Tawnya died, right in this spot.
McDonald says those 4 older classmates told Tawnya they were all going to a party.
She had no idea that they were this mad at her.
But that party was a lie.
This is some high school drama.
Yes.
The mastermind's motive?
Was frustrated because she was taking boyfriends from her.
And the Heavies?
Wanted her to be his girlfriend and maybe have sex with her, but she was not interested in him.
McDonald says the mastermind and one of the other female suspects picked up Tawnya and dropped her off here, a well-known house where kids would smoke and drink in Spring Hill. But there was no real party that night, just 2 other classmates playing video games, drinking, and getting high. McDonald says the girls basically ditched Tawnya, forcing her to walk home around midnight.
That's the last spot that you will see Tawnya on the record.
Her house was only a few blocks away, but to get there, she'd have to pass that cemetery. McDonald says the Heavy and the mastermind knew that'd be her route and their window to commit the crime.
I believe they were laying in wait in the woods here, saying, "Hey, come on, Tawnya, come on in the, come on in the cemetery." The Heavy held her while she was being beaten, and I think one of the parties brought a knife to the occasion. I firmly believe that whoever put her there knew this area.
Tanya's body laid in that spot for 6 months, until June 1997, when a farmer found a skull.
Your heart just drops.
That whole time, police said she was a runaway.
They were too easily bought into the fact that, well, there's been other runaways, she's just a runaway.
McDonald says those 6 months are why there are no charges today. It gave his 4 suspects a chance to get their story straight. And now he has a new blow to the case, involving the Heavy.
He just passed away.
That's right. McDonald's main suspect had been sick for some time. This past October, he died.
It just leaves us kind of in a quandary of what to do.
Former Johnson County Detective Scott Atwell was assigned to Tanya's case until he retired in 2011. When he heard that news, he hoped it wasn't too late.
We call it a come to Jesus interview, and see if on death's bed he'll either confess or still deny that he had anything to do with it.
He wanted to know if the sheriff's department was able to interview the Heavy one last time before he passed. So we asked.
Did you get a chance to go talk with him or no?
No, I didn't.
So now the focus shifts to McDonald's 3 other suspects, who he believes know exactly what happened to Tawnya Knight.
Do you think she'll ever get justice?
I believe so.
It would bring closure. We haven't been able to have complete closure. I will never give up hope.
In Spring Hill, Kansas, I'm Joe Chiodo, KCTV 5 News.